Hey, what's going on, guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in today's video, I want to address a very common question that I see a lot of beginners asking, and that is, what is the purpose of scales? Why do I need to practice scales? These scales are boring. They're just mindless exercises. There's no musicality behind them. What's the purpose of practicing these scales? I'm trying to jam. I'm trying to sound like Jimi Hendrix. I'm trying to sound like whoever your favorite guitar player is. Why do I need to practice these boring scales? In this video, I want to address that. So I want to give you a basic overview of the why behind what the purpose of scales is. And then I want to give you 3 tips that I think will really help you to get the most out of your scale practice. All right, so before I give you my 3 practice tips, let me just quickly give you an overview of the why behind all of this. Why should you practice scales? What is the purpose? The purpose is to drill into your mind the correct notes that will work in a given situation. That's all there is to it. So, if you look at a guitar, this guitar has 6 strings on it, 22 frets. Some guitars have 24 frets, some guitars have 7 strings. Just this guitar, 6 strings, 22 frets, that's 132 different locations for which you can play a note. So that can seem overwhelming, that can seem like it could take forever to learn. But in reality, all that it is, it's just 12 notes. There's only 12 notes on the guitar. So when you're practicing a scale, or more specifically when you're practicing a scale pattern, what you're doing is you're practicing some of those 12 total notes. When you practice some of those 12 total notes in what we call a scale, what you're doing is you're practicing the notes that are going to work in a specific context. So if you're practicing your C major scale, for example, the C major scale contains 7 notes. That's 7 of the 12 total notes that are available to you. But you're just practicing 7 of those notes. Now, why would you practice the C major scale? What's the purpose of practicing the C major scale? The reason is if you practice your C major scale, you can practice it here, you can practice it here, 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 wherever you want. Whichever pattern you choose to use, you're practicing the 7 notes that are going to work in the context of C major. So if you're trying to solo along with a band that's in the key of C major, or the band is playing in the key of C major, or if you're trying to solo along with a backing track that's in the key of C major, then you will know through the use of this practicing of the scale patterns, then you'll know the notes to use as your improvisational framework for that specific context. So if the band's playing the key of C major, you probably wouldn't want to be playing the D major scale. You probably wouldn't be wanting to play the F sharp minor scale. If the band's playing in C major, you're probably going to want to play your C major scale. So there's going to be the notes that sound good in that given situation. So the other notes, since the C major scale contains 7 notes, there's 5 other notes that are not part of that scale. That's not saying that you can never use those notes. You can. You absolutely can. But you want to be able to do so on command. You want to have control. You want to consciously know, okay, I'm purposely using an out-of-key note here. I'm doing this because I want to do it. But just make sure you have control of it. Practicing your C major scale in any pattern or position is going to give you that type of control. So with that said, let me give you my 3 tips on scale practice. All right, so my first tip is to practice scales in 2 different ways. Number 1, practice your scale, or more specifically your scale pattern, just running up and down the pattern in sequential order over and over and over. So this is typically the way that most beginning students will be shown a scale, and this is also the way that most beginning students will start to question, why am I doing this? What's the point? This is boring. There's nothing musical about this. But this is one of the 2 ways that I'm saying to practice your scale patterns. So if I was to practice my C major scale using this one pattern right here in the open position, I may run up and down the scale pattern for 10 minutes straight or something. So I may just do that over and over and over, 10 minutes straight, 15 minutes straight, whatever. Many people may consider that to be boring. Many people may not know what the point of that is. But what you're doing is you're drilling into your mind the notes that are found in the key of C major for this specific area of the fretboard. Those are going to be the notes that will work the best in the context of a musical situation in which the band or the backing track is also in the key of C major. So you're drilling into your mind the in-key notes. So the notes that you don't play in that area are the out-of-key notes. The notes that you are playing when you're practicing your scale, those are the in-key notes. So you're drilling that into your mind by doing that repetitive exercise. So after you do that, then you go on to the second way of practicing your scales, and that is to turn on a backing track that is in the key of the scale that you're practicing. So if you're practicing your C major scale, turn on a C major backing track. If you're practicing your E minor scale, turn on an E minor backing track. So whatever scale you're practicing, find a backing track, turn that on, and jam along with that specific backing track. Let me show you how that sounds. So my second tip for you, if you're new to soloing, new to scales, new to lead guitar in general, my advice is to just focus on the key for now. Don't worry about the chords, just worry about the key. That's huge. Learning how to play in key is a huge, huge thing. It's a very, very important skill. It's a fundamental skill. Being able to play in key up and down the entire neck of the guitar, it takes a very long time to do. It could take months, it could take years, depending on how much practice you put into it. Learning how to play in key is huge. A lot of beginners to soloing, a lot of people that are still trying to figure out the why behind why they should practice scales, they have this idea that you have to play a different scale over each chord. Now that may be true sometimes, but more often than not, especially if you're just pulling up a backing track that's in the key of C major, if all the chords are part of the same key, then you only have to play one scale. So in this example that we're using, the C major to G major to A minor to F major chord, all those chords are part of the key of C major, so we only have to play one scale. We have to play the C major scale the entire time over all of the chords. A lot of people will think, well, there's 4 chords, I must have to play a C major scale over the C major chord, and then I have to play a G major scale over the G major chord, and then an A minor scale over the A minor chord, F major scale over the F major chord. No, that's not how it works. And that's one of the biggest points of confusion that I see beginners having. That is not how it works. If all the chords are part of the same key, in which case, or in this case, it's all part of the key of C major, one scale, all the chords, that's it. So how do you know if the chords are part of the same key? You just look at the notes that make up each individual chord, and then you see if the notes that are found in each chord are part of the overall scale that you're using. So we're focusing on the C major scale, which contains the 7 notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Those are our 7 notes. Those are our framework of notes that we're practicing. We're trying to solo over a chord progression that's in the key of C major, using a C major chord, G major chord, A minor chord, and F major chord. Looking at the notes that make up each of those chords, C major is C, E, and G, G major is G, B, and D, A minor is A, C, and E, F major is F, A, and C. There's no out-of-key notes found in any of those chords, therefore all of those chords are part of the same key. So we use one scale, that's it. If there was a D major chord, for example, thrown into the mix, like the rhythm section threw a D major chord in there, D major chord has the notes D, F sharp, and A. There's one out-of-key note in that chord. That's an out-of-key chord. So if that was the case, then yes, we would want to do something different over that one single chord. But that's not the case here. With this example, we're just focusing on these 4 chords. All of these 4 chords are part of the same key. Therefore, there's no need to switch scales. One scale, all the chords. So The reason I'm stressing this point so much is because just learning how to play in key, you're not always going to want to just play in this one little area. Ultimately, you want to learn how to play over the entire neck of the guitar. So this guitar is 6 strings, 22 frets. That's 132 different note locations. There's only 12 notes in total, as we said. So of these 132 different note locations, 7 of the notes are going to be the in-key notes. 5 of the notes are going to be out-of-key notes. Getting to the point where it's like second nature to be able to run up and down the fretboard, only playing the in-key notes, that takes a long time. That could take months. That could take years. It's a skill. It's a fundamental skill. It takes time. That's why I say learn that one skill and then get really, really good at that skill. Once you get good at that skill, then take it to the next level. The more advanced stuff would be, all right, what do I do on a per chord basis? The answer to that question is called chord tone targeting, but you're not there yet. Actually, I don't know who you are watching this video, but if you're still new to scales, if you're a beginner to soloing, beginner to scales, if you're someone that's, this video is really applying to you, then don't worry about the chords, just worry about the key. So I just want to make something very clear here before moving on, and that is I'm not saying to ignore the chords forever. I'm just saying that if you're a beginner to soloing, ignore the chords for now. Focus on just the key for now. Once you get good at playing in key, once you get really good at navigating the fretboard in key, then you can start moving on to more advanced things, which is where you start focusing on the chords. That's called chord tone targeting. Chord tone targeting, in my opinion, is a bit more of an advanced concept than just playing in key. But just playing in key is a very big thing. That is a very fundamental concept. It's very important. It takes a long time to learn how to navigate the fretboard up and down the neck, playing only in key notes. I'm also not saying that you should never play out of key notes either. You definitely can. You can play out of key notes. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. But having the ability to play in key, meaning having the ability to play only the 7 notes that are found in the key of the chord progression that you are soloing over, is a skill that takes time. It takes months. It could take years. It depends on how much practice you put into it. It takes a lot of time. Focus on that specific skill. Once you get good at that specific skill, then worry about what to do on a per chord basis. Or then worry about how to tastefully throw in out of key notes. For now, if you're just beginning, just focus on the key. That's tip number 2. So my third tip for you would be to get really good at one pattern of the scale that you're working on, which in this case is the C major scale. Once you get really good at that one pattern, move up the fretboard a little bit and then work on another pattern of the same scale. Once you get really good at that pattern, move up and then practice another pattern. So I keep saying this word pattern because that's a unique thing about the guitar. On the guitar we have all these different patterns. Pattern here, pattern here, pattern here, pattern here. But when you're practicing your C major scale, you're just playing 7 notes. That's it. You're playing 7 notes. But the fact that those 7 notes can be found all up and down the neck of the guitar on various different frets and various different strings, that forms different patterns. So I can play the C major scale using this pattern that we already looked at. or I could play it here, or I could play it here. So I just played the same exact 7 notes in 3 different patterns. And that's one of the unique traits about the guitar, but it's also one of the reasons that people get so confused. They often confuse patterns for all different other types of things. One of the most common misconceptions is modes. People often think that these various different patterns are called modes, and that's a whole other topic in and of itself. It's just different patterns of the same 7 notes. Piano players, they don't have this problem. As a piano student, you learn your C major scale. On a piano, your C major scale is just the white notes. So you play your C major scale, you're just playing the white notes. You're not thinking about, oh, pattern 1 here, oh, pattern 2 here, or then I move up to here, I'm playing this pattern. You're just thinking of the 7 notes of the C major scale. Well, the same thing is true on the guitar. You're still just playing 7 notes. It's just the fact that 6 strings, 22 frets, it forms this matrix of notes. It forms this grid. So it forms all these different patterns. But you're still just playing 7 notes. That's it. So tip number 3 is just master one of the patterns, then move on. Move up to here, learn your scale pattern there, master that one, move on, master that pattern. So I did a lesson, it's called The 3 Most Common Ways to Visualize the Fretboard. I'll post a link to that below. That shows you how to visualize the entire scale. It's actually in the same key, it's in the key of C major. It shows you how to visualize the C major scale using 3 patterns. So you can cover the entire fretboard using just 3 patterns. It shows you how to do it using 5 patterns, and it shows you how to do it using 7 patterns. It doesn't matter how many patterns you use. You can use 4 patterns. You can use 6 patterns. It does not matter. What matters is you're practicing your C major scale. You're practicing 7 notes. So that's just, I try to drill this concept into people's heads that are new to guitar. Everyone that starts out on guitar gets confused by this patterns concept. So yes, there are different patterns on the fretboard, but if you can just kind of just overlook this whole patterns thing and just start to think, okay, I'm playing 7 notes. I'm playing the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. That's the 7 notes that I'm focusing on when I'm practicing my C major scale. I want to practice my C major scale here. I want to play it here. I want to play it here. I want to play it here. Ultimately, I want to be able to play the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B up and down the entire neck of the guitar so that I can solo in key with a band that is playing in the key of C major. Whatever patterns you want to use, whatever, go for it. It's just 7 notes. So hopefully that was able to clear some confusion up for beginners that are new to soloing. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them below. See you next time.